All right, today we are going to do a little bit of review and then we're going to talk about energy pyramids. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have your note sheet handy. Make sure on your note sheet to write down any vocabulary words that I say you need to write down. And if there's any questions as we go through the video that you'd like to ask me in class tomorrow, please make sure you make a note of that. If you're watching this through Edmodo, you can submit a question right away. If you're not, then write it on your note sheet and we'll talk about it in class. All right, so let's talk about energy flow and what we know, what we've already learned in class. Just a quick review. We learned that all energy comes from the sun. We know that. We know that producers are the key. We know that photosynthesis and cellular respiration are the processes that make all that happen for us. We know that chlorophyll is green. We learned about Roy G. Biv, and we met Tina. All of those things are going to be important as we go through this, these next few slides, and we talk about energy flow. Okay. Over here in my cloud, don't forget, we've got a little bit of glucose. We've got some carbon dioxide. We have some green chlorophyll, some water, oxygen, and sunlight. And all of those things work together to build our foundation for energy flow. All right, here are some words that we need to remember. This hopefully is review. We've talked about it in class, but just in case, here we go. One of the words that you really need to understand is a food chain. A food chain is a model. We've learned about models before. They can be three-dimensional, like a globe, or they can be like the magnet models that we put on the board. They can be a styrofoam solar system. They can be a lot of things, but they can also just be written on paper, a representation. So it's a model that shows how matter and energy move through our ecosystem. When you first learned about food chains, you learned about predator-prey relationships, and that's obvious how matter flows through which organism consumes the other organisms. But when we're talking about energy, we need to get rid of that word eat. Who eats who? We need to stretch our understanding of the concept and talk about how the energy flows from one organism to the next. And so here's just a very simple example of how energy flows and matter flows through an ecosystem. We have grass plants who are producers. We have a mouse who gets its energy from the grass, and we have an owl that gets its energy from the mouse. Very important that we remove that word eat, and it substitutes with energy flow. So remember, the arrows show energy flow. You heard that in my voice. I hope you did, because that's how I always say it. Arrows show energy flow. And sometimes when I make my tests and other people make these tests, they get a little tricky on you and they flip the arrows. So they want to trip you up just a little bit to see if you're really paying attention to this very important concept. Arrows show energy flow. Another vocabulary word that you may or may not have heard is trophic level. This is one of my favorite words to say in science because you get to say the F sound for the pH. Trophic levels. So each step on the food chain, right here, is called a trophic level. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 trophic levels, and we're going to see an example of that in just a second. These are vocabulary words that you need to have written down on your notes sheet. A food chain and a trophic level. So if you need to press pause, make sure you have those down, and because they'll be on a vocabulary test. And it wouldn't hurt to write down your example either. Okay. So here's an example of our trophic levels and what we call them. It's really nothing fancy. It's just another name. So our grass plants, our producers, now become our first trophic level. Our mouse, he's an herbivore. We call this one our second trophic level. He has a special name too. We call them the primary consumers. Now in the classroom, when you look at the board with the green background, you're going to see primary and secondary. Okay, this guy is our primary consumer. He's always going to be an herbivore. And then the owl is our third trophic level. He's going to be our secondary consumer. Now, on some of the food webs that we're going to see, we're going to have third level consumers. We call them tertiary, and yeah, they would be the fourth trophic level. Okay, so now once we understand our food chains and our trophic levels, let's look at what happens when we put them all together. We put them all together to make a food web. And I know you've learned about food webs before. They show how matter flows through. Typically, you've learned predator-prey relationships. You learned who was a carnivore, who was an omnivore, who was an herbivore, and which ones were producers. But this way, we're showing energy flow. And remember, the arrows still show energy flow. I'm not sure if you can see that down there at the bottom of the screen, but if you can't, listen to me. Arrows still show energy flow, and that's very important. So if we take our basic food chain and we add some other consumers from our ecosystem in there, it looks like this. We've got our grass. Of course, that's getting its energy from the sun. Okay, and it's giving its energy to the grasshopper and the mouse. The mouse is giving its energy to the frog. The mouse is giving its energy to the snake and the owl. Notice how I keep saying is giving his energy to, is giving his energy to. That's very important because arrows still show energy flow. Right, now, a couple more words that you need to know. One of the most important ones is biodiversity. You learned in English class, hopefully this year, and I know I've talked about it before, bio means life. Diversity means different. So if you put that word together, it means the different kinds of living things in the ecosystem. Biodiversity helps the stability of the ecosystem. If you've ever sat at a tippy table or a tippy stool, it's uncomfortable and you want to fix that. With our ecosystem, if it's tippy, if it's not a stable environment, it's not necessarily the best situation. So the way I kind of summarize the word biodiversity and the concept of it means if you have many species of animals and plants, you're going to have many links on your food web. And if you have many links on your food web, you're going to have sustainability in your ecosystem, which means your ecosystem is going to be healthy. Everybody's going to have enough to eat. There's going to be enough energy flowing through that ecosystem to make all of your populations healthy and happy. Okay. Trophic levels, we can do a little bit more with them. So we took our food web, and we understood producers, we understood our primary, our secondary, and even onto our tertiary consumers. So now let's put them together in a different way that shows energy flow in a little bit different way. We call that an energy pyramid. Okay, so there's our energy pyramid. Our energy pyramid is what happens when we take our food web and we put it together in the shape of it looks almost like a layer cake if you ask me. Okay, energy pyramid. So we've got our producers on the bottom, and this is our first trophic level. And then we have our primary consumers in the second level. These are getting from our second trophic level. And then we have our secondary consumers, which is our third level. Now, these are going to be primarily your carnivores and your omnivores. You've learned those words before. And our primary consumers are going to be mostly herbivores. They're always going to be herbivores. Now, notice I didn't put plants here. Your producers are not always plants. We're going to learn about algae, and we're going to learn about bacteria and plankton. So there are some other producers that are not plants. So we can't call them plants. We call them producers. Okay. So now on to the biggest idea that we're going to practice and work on in class, and here it is. As you move up the pyramid from the bottom to the top, or in this case our layer cake, the amount of available energy goes down. About 10%, and this is rough, this is not a exact number, but about 10% of the energy that was available at the first level is only available at the second level. Okay, so only about 10% is passed from each level as you move up the pyramid, from one trophic level to the next. And so here I have a little example of that. I have 1,000 producers on the bottom. I'm not so sure that you can see the bottom here, but if you can't, I'm just telling you there's 1,000 producers, and those are our grass plants from our food chain. And that will support, it'll give enough energy to support 100 primary consumers. That's 10% less. Okay, and those are our mice. And then that will give enough energy to support 10 of our secondary consumers, which would be owls. So remember, this is a model. In nature, it may not be exactly this way, but you can see that each level gets 10% of the energy that was available to the first level. We're going to work with that in class. We're going to practice that in class, and hopefully you'll have some questions about this, and we will talk about it when we get back together. Thanks for watching.